Hey guys, it's Jambros, and I am back with the much requested Fury Warrior. This will be a loot guide for Phase 5 of TBC, and we'll cover all of the relevant item drops in Sunwell Plateau and compare them against each other to give you an idea of what may or may not be good for your Fury Warrior. Before we jump into the gear, let's go over some of the sims, parameters, and general methodology I used in comparing the items. I used the WoW TBC Classic Simulator this time, just like I did with the previous Arms Warrior video. All appropriate raid, party, and personal buffs and debuffs will be applied here. All purely single target. These sims are done against the high armor boss, but with the prevalence of armor pen in this tier. Low armor boss gear sets will be explained as well. Since a large majority of the bosses in Sunwell are demon, I went ahead and simmed these with demon slaying. These sims use complete gear sets and don't just sim individual items. When swapping pieces for testing, other item slots may be changed to keep a maximum DPS output. For example, changing gems around for hit rating, or swapping a piece of gear out for another tier item for a 2 or 4 piece bonus. All sims use full BIS gear for Phase 5 and compares the best in slot item to the next best items in that slot. While the default sim is a 7700 armor demon, aka Brutalis or Muru, the rest are 6200 armor, and gearing differences will be explained here. This is the Fury spec that I went with for most of the gear simulations here. The only real variable option here are the points in sword specialization and improved berserker stance. As long as you have glaives, the more points you put into sword spec, the larger the DPS increase, up to about 50 more DPS while sacrificing threat reduction. These points will be moved around a bit when simulating different weapons, but I kept the spec as a standard when simulating gear to get an accurate comparison. And here's what you'll be looking at when you're in a full Sunwell set. Some of these items are very, very close. And by a full Sunwell set, I mean with no regards for armor pen caps and against the high armor boss. Low armor boss substitutions will be reviewed in this guide though. Remember, this is simmed without wreck this time around. This brings crit up to value with strength. As long as you hit your socket bonuses, strength, crit, and hybrid gems are all within just a few DPS of each other. Strength is technically better on wreck pulls, but otherwise they are mostly equal. We'll start out with the helm slot. The main takeaway here should be that it's actually the male helm off of Kil'jaeden that is best in slot, and not just for high armor bosses, but low armor bosses as well. The non-armor pen duplicitous guys did not perform well in comparison. However, the Crown of Anastarion, the plate helm is still a good piece, and you may have to settle for that upgrade at first. All of them are upgrades over using the tier helm to complete a 4-piece bonus. I listed the new upgraded engineering goggles here so you can see where you may stand if you're trying to gear a not yet fully raid geared character or something. The NG goggles may be an upgrade over the tier helm if you do not have the other tier pieces you need to complete the not really all that important 4-piece bonus. If you're a jewel crafter, the crafted neck is your best option in this slot. It is bind on pickup, but the pattern drops off of Sunwell Trash. It should be pretty easy to get. The next best item is the Clutch of Demise off of Brutalis. Both of the Choker of Serrated Blades and the Choker of Endless Nightmares are still relevant here, and not really super behind the Clutch if you're not a jewel crafter. The shoulders have some tight competition for the top spot. The Demon Tooth shoulder pads beat out using the Onslaught shoulders and resulting 4-piece bonus by literally just 1 DPS. Certainly not significant at all. The Mantle of the Golden Forest was also close, but should probably not be considered once you have all of the 3 new tier pieces. Against both high and low armor targets, Vehemence did not really measure up. However, the Pauldrons of Berserking did. This slot is a great place to drop armor pen if needed, and those shoulders are definitely worth a pickup against many of the bosses here in Sunwell. The Cloak is a very clear winner here. The Cloak of Unforgivable Sin from Kil'jaeden comes out more than 40 DPS ahead of Dory's Embrace. This cloak is going to be super contested. It's the only new one in Phase 5, and there is no large difference between Dory's and Shadow Moon Destroyer's Drape, but one is simply bought with badges. This is definitely a high priority item for Fury Warriors. This Bladed Chaos Tunic is an incredibly strong item and will be pretty contested. Even against a low armor boss, this chest piece still comes out ahead. The Hardcoring Battle Plate is only 7 DPS behind, and worth crafting if you're a blacksmith, so you wouldn't have to compete with everybody else over the Chaos Tunic. The rest of your options are comparatively very bad, although I could see a situation where you would be able to take the War Harness of Reckless Fury for a smallish upgrade if it's otherwise unwanted. All the new tier pieces are super important to acquire, and the bracers are no different. This bracer token is over a 55 DPS upgrade from the previously BIS Deadly Cuffs. Not only a large upgrade on its own, having all 3 of the new tier tokens opens up a possibility of using the shoulder slot for the 4-piece if needed. For the hands, the Thalassian Ranger Gauntlets are worth having against both high and low armor targets. However, if you're rich or have a reasonable spot in line to get sun motes from your guild, then the leatherworking crafted Gloves of Immortal Dusk are very close, and a massive upgrade over what you were using before. The Borderland Pain Grips are also a solid option if you'd rather stick to plate than wear intellect gear. 4-piece for Fury is not the best, and the glove spot is not really the place to do it. That's pretty much reserved for shoulders only. I did include the blacksmith and crafted gloves just for comparison because they're terrible. You don't want to use those, just stick to the leatherworking ones instead. It's funny to see that the Belt of 100 Deaths was best for 3 phases, only to come up as one of the biggest slots to upgrade in Phase 5 at more than 60 DPS. The Onslaught Belt is an important tier piece, and is a direct upgrade to 100 Deaths as it also has expertise. Everything else is almost unspeakably far behind. There are 2 big upgrades in Sunwell to consider for the leg spot. The Leggings of the Immortal Knight, a massive and contested leather armor pen piece, and the Fel Fury leg plates, the non-armor pen plate option. While against the high armor boss, Fel Fury measures up about 18 DPS behind Immortal Knight. However, against a low armor boss, and especially when paired with the non-armor pen shoulder option, the Fel Fury leg plates move ahead by 8 to 10 DPS. Acquiring both and using them situationally would be the dream, however unrealistic that may be. The Leggings of Divine Retribution remain relevant as a particularly strong piece from Black Temple. The tier legs remain a very poor option here. The third and final new tier token is for the boots. Again, a very large upgrade from your Black Temple options at more than 40 DPS. You'll be competing with legit everybody that's on your token for them, just like all the other new tier tokens, so I wish you good luck. Here is a chart with some of the new ring combinations. A lot of these options are very close with the clear exception of the Band of Ruinous Delight. That's undoubtedly your #1 ring. The Stormrage Signet Ring looks a little poor here, but is extremely useful in managing your hit rating while gearing up, allowing you to move more pieces around. The crafted Hardcorium Band is very close to the Signet of Primal Wrath and Angelisa's Revenge, but is also easily crafted. The Angelisa's Revenge is actually bought with badges and makes a very good baseline pair of rings with the Jewel Crafting crafted ring. Your ultimate best in slot trinkets are the very familiar Dragonspine Trophy and the new Black and Narrow Sliver. And at first glance, you may think that it's not even close. If you have a set of glaives, you'd be right. The Sliver, DST, and Glaive Proc all have great synergy together. However, if you don't have a set of glaives, the gap between the Sliver and your next best trinket, the Shard of Contempt, narrows considerably. That 36 DPS difference drops to 16. Regardless, as soon as Phase 5 drops, you should probably get to farming Matricer's Terrace for the Shard of Contempt. It should be easy to get it, and it may be a while before you get to see a Sliver if you aren't very lucky. You may notice that I've listed 2 bows here as best in slot. This should be pretty obvious, but you probably won't be getting the legendary bow even though it is the overall best. The golden bow of Quel'Thalas is only 1 or 2 DPS behind, and even then you'll have to pry it away from your hunters. Those 2 bows are far and away your best. The Sunwell Trash ranged weapon is on par with your previously best Ancient Amani longbow, and should be easy to get if Suleiman wasn't very good to you. The new badge bow was an intriguing hit option, but ended up just being too weak overall, plus it costs like a whopping 150 badges. Alright, so we're at the weapons, and obviously what we have is a pair of Warglaives as our best weapons. I'll go ahead and say that the next best combination of weapons is Hand of the Deceiver and Mounting Vengeance. 2 fist weapons. But how did we get here? What if you don't have a pair of glaives? Let's see what's best otherwise. First, let's look at a partial set of glaives. If you only have 1 of 2, then they are both independently a downgrade from the absolute best available in Sunwell. A set together, of course, is far better. Now let's take a look at some of the other options. These are all of your new weapon options. Hand, Mounting Vengeance, the Season 4 Arena Weapon, Muramasa, and the Dragon Scale Encrusted Longblade. I've separated this into 2 sections, with and without Shard of Contempt. The expertise on the Dragonscale blade is very valuable and can really inflate its value. However, if Shard of Contempt is present, then this sword can actually overcap you, making it much less useful. Shown here is without Shard, instead using your ultimately best in slot trinkets. Here what you'll see that if you don't have glaives or the otherwise Abyss, Hand of the Deceiver, and Mounting Vengeance, then pairing a Dragon Scale blade with one of the other is going to be the best that you can actually do. Shown here is with Shard of Contempt equipped. As you can see, the Dragon Scale long blade falls off a cliff here. If you're wondering where Dragon Strike fits in all of this, it is pretty close to Muramasa in the main hand. And here's a quick summary of our findings on the weapon pairings. Glaives will be number 1, but next best will always be Hand of the Deceiver in the main hand, or Mounting Vengeance in the offhand. Second best will be the Dragon Scale blade if you aren't using Shard, otherwise it's last. Third is a Season 4 arena weapon. Shown here is a sword, but orcs can use the axes. And fourth place is Muramasa, which is maybe a tiny bit ahead of or about the same as your Dragon Strike. Throughout this loot guide, I've been frequently mentioning low and high armor bosses, and here's a little bit of how all this works for a Fury Warrior. This chart shows the armor values and the different debuffs that reduce this amount. There are 2 high armor bosses in Sunwell, Brutalist and Muru himself, but not Muru's ads. Everything else is a low armor boss. Even with the Executioner enchant, you will never armor cap against the high armor boss. A fully decked out Sunwell Fury Warrior will have almost 1500 armor pen. Now, that's a pretty large amount of armor pen, and obviously much more than 868 listed here as the cap for low armor bosses. You might be tempted to switch to double Mongoose in this situation, and while it is a DPS increase, I'd try to hold back from doing that unless you have a duplicate main hand where you can just swap out your enchants at will. It's okay to overcap that 868 number. It's not a hard cap. 1708 is the hard cap in that situation. Executioner does not have 100% uptime, so that armor pen still has value. It just starts to lose value over that number. Even in my full best in slot low armor boss setup, you still have 1100 armor pen. These were mentioned earlier, but for a bit of a recap, these are your strongest switches from armor pen to non-armor pen pieces. These switches will require some clever manipulation of your hit rating, as you're dropping quite a bit here. A lot of these non-armor pen pieces just don't have hit. And that's everything. I hope you all enjoyed watching and maybe learned a thing or two about your gearing options in Phase 5 as a Fury Warrior. I'd really appreciate it if you could support this channel and like or subscribe. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them below in the comments and I'll do my best to answer. Thanks, guys.